Gentlemen, I just want to review some of the things that I presented to you at our last meeting before you make a decision on this, because I think it's highly important to the future of this institution. Now, this university has a reputation for excellence in the field of higher education. I don't believe we can continue to maintain this leadership position unless we begin to use robots to teach the increasing numbers of students. We must begin to use robots now. They're cheaper in the long run.
That's utter drivel, McDougal. We offer a first-rate education at this institution, and that means in large part human interaction. Those machines of yours may be flashy, but they can't be as flexible as human beings in a teaching situation. I expect professors of this university to offer more than superficial lectures.
Ah, but these new robots deliver exceptional lectures, and in clear, beautifully spoken English, too. And they have nothing but time on their hands for their students. But, gentlemen, you be the judge. Clark, would you come in, please? He's a bit unsure of himself in his new surroundings. All right, if you gentlemen are ready, we'll begin the lecture.
During that particular
Hold it. Take it from the top. Take it from the top. See, they're programmed to respond to new verbal instructions as I give them to them.
Please wait until the lecture is finished. I'll respond to your...
Look, Clark, why don't you go straighten your memories and check back with us in a little while. Gentlemen, obviously he's a little nonplussed, but they adjust very quickly in a couple of days.
Professor McDougal. I'm afraid it's in over its head. It's obvious the thing's best is simply not going to be good enough.
To the contrary, Davenport, if you just open your mind to a few facts, I think you'd realize...
Gentlemen, we can't make a decision now. You know that. Here's what I propose we do. Next term, we take 2 sections of American history, and we put you, Professor Davenport, in charge of one of the sections, and we'll let your robot handle the other.
I'll be happy to prove that damn thing useless, Mr.
I wouldn't be too sure, Davenport.
Gentlemen, either way, or both the same, at least we'll have a good test. Now, we'll give the same final examination to both sections. And we'll make statistical tests of the hypothesis that both groups learn the same amount.
Hypothesis? Why is that necessary? Are we not trying to prove which section learns more?
Yes, but the way this is done in statistical theory is to make a hypothesis like this and then look for evidence to prove it wrong. If we find that evidence, we'll know which method is best. You see, basically, this means we are either going to say the hypothesis is wrong or untrue and reject it, or say that it is true and keep it.
Is there any possibility, however remote, that there could be an error on the test that might suggest that thing is better than it really is? Each of us will only be teaching one class. Isn't there a chance that more of the brighter students might be placed accidentally in his class, its class? And wouldn't that make for an unfair comparison?
Well, we can take care of part of the problem by designing the test well. You see, we can randomly assign students to the 2 classes because both you and the robot will be teaching classes at the same time. That way, there won't be any systematic difference between the 2 classes. However, you're right. There is still going to be some chance of an error.
Well, that could be a very serious error. I mean, you could say the hypothesis was wrong when, in fact, it wasn't.
Yes, that is a possible error we could make.
Or you could say it was correct and keep it when, in fact, you should reject it.
Yes, both types of errors could happen. They're both possible, although we hope not likely.
Well, isn't there a way of designing the test so that neither error could occur?
Unfortunately, we cannot.
Why not?
Well, remember, we want to find out the true state of things. But we cannot directly know that, not unless we could look at the population of all students. Well, that's out of the question because, obviously, there's too many of them. So we've got to work with a sample from that population. And this sample makes up your 2 classes. Now, since we can't measure the whole population, we're going to have a chance that our sample is not representative for some reason or another. There will always be some uncertainty about the result. There will always be some chance of an error.
Well, if that's the case, what are you trying to do with the statistics?
Well, what we're trying to do is to get control of those errors, to make them as unlikely as possible. Now, in this particular case, we're looking for a way to either accept or reject the hypothesis that there is no difference between the amounts that the 2 sections learned. We need to balance the 2 types of errors you mentioned against each other.
Now, what were the 2 types of errors again, and what do you mean, balance them against each other?
Well, look, here. It's like this. Now, there are two possible things that could be true. Either there is no difference between the amounts that the two sections learned, that's the hypothesis, or there is a difference. Now, we've got to decide which of these is the case. And we do that by testing the hypothesis that there is no difference between the amounts learned. Now, we may decide to reject this hypothesis and conclude that there must be a difference. Or we may decide to retain the hypothesis so that it is possible that there is no difference. Now, these two possibilities and these two make up the four possible outcomes for the experiment. Now, if there is a difference between the methods and we reject the hypothesis that the amount learned is the same, well, that would be a correct decision. Similarly, if there is no difference between the methods and we do not reject the hypothesis, then that's okay. These other two possibilities are errors. Now, this is the type of error that you were talking about. Here, there is no true difference between the methods, and yet we find that there is one. And here, this is the other type of error. Here, there really is a difference, and yet we don't find it. Now, in statistical terminology, this is usually referred to as a type 1 error, and this is referred to as a type 2 error.
Well, this is beginning to seem a little hopeless to me. Apparently, you're beset by errors on all sides. Can't you work things so that neither error is possible?
Unfortunately, we cannot. Remember, we're never going to be absolutely certain about the true amounts learned because we're working with a sample and not with the entire population. There's only so much information in the sample, so there's always going to be some chance of an error.
So how do you decide what to do?
Well, that's where the technical part of statistics comes in. Our goal is to construct a procedure to decide whether to accept or reject the hypothesis. We want to find a procedure that's going to take the possibility of making errors into account, but at the same time reduce our likelihood of making an error.
So you try to reduce the chance of making an error even though you can't eliminate the possibility entirely.
Right.
Ah, here we go.
Please wait. Please wait.
Needs a recharge.
Please wait. Please wait. Please wait. Please wait.